Hey man, I'm Kevin Smith. This is Sundance 2019, and look, it's the director and the cast of Clemency. Give it up for him, ladies and gentlemen. They give me these cards, before I do all the interviews and whatnot, so I can familiarize myself with some of the people. When they gave me your card, I was so ashamed to also call myself a director, because you're a director that's taken film and using it in positive ways, not just like to tell a story and enrich oneself, but to help others, save other lives. Can we talk about that before we dive into the movie? There's a program that you work in.
So I, through the process of researching so deeply for this film, I developed a passion for advocating for the humanity of people who are incarcerated. So I've also been a film professor for over a decade, where I teach screenwriting and directing. And so as I was volunteering on clemency cases and visiting incarcerated women in prisons, I looked around and I thought that a lot of these stories will never leave prison walls. So I reflected on my life as a professor, and I just told myself that me helping people tell their stories shouldn't be confined to the privileged walls of a college classroom. So I decided to create a program called Pens to Pictures, where I condensed all of the classes that I've taught as a professor from script to screen into a one-year program where I teach women who are incarcerated to make their own short films from script to screen. I teach them college-level screenwriting, college-level production, pre-production, college-level directing. I pair them up with community artists who come into the prison and guide them through the pre-production process. We have auditions, they have rehearsals inside the prison, every single creative decision they make. And then we brought in a professional editor into the prison, and they edited the film with an editor, and we screened the film all around the country. And all of the women in the inaugural group of Pens to Pictures are now out of prison.
Come on, man. So your job is to walk around Sundance, make the rest of us feel like a piece of shit. My God, that's beautiful. Okay, but let's go into the movie itself. Clemency is about what?
So Clemency is about the emotional and psychological kind of unraveling and complexities of a prison warden, Bernadine Williams, played by Alfre Woodard, as she prepares to execute a man on death row, played by Aldis Hodge.
The notion of a prison warden, and the story being told through the prison warden's point of view, as opposed to the warden being a mustache twist and I'm going to get these people, is completely revolutionary. I've never seen that before. When you were writing it, did you instantly think of Ms. Woodard here?
When I was writing it, I really separate myself from writer and director, because I think they're two very different skill sets.
Explain. My God, this is like a fucking film school course. Teach me, teacher. What do you mean by that?
Well, writing, you are really focusing on the character development and the narrative, and you're divorcing yourself from the visual possibilities. And yes, you're keeping that in mind as a writer, but you really need to separate yourself from what a director is going to do, and not take for granted that just because you wrote the script that you can also direct the hell out of it, right? So I wrote the script.
Where were you 25 years ago when I started my career? Oh my God, I would have been such a better filmmaker. Keep going.
So when I'm writing, I'm really focusing on story. I'm focusing on emotional arcs. I'm focusing on character development. And so once I got the script to the right place, then I'm able to put my director hat on and think about what is my vision and who can I see embodying these roles. And so when my producer, my phenomenal producer, Bronwyn Cornelius, just said Alfre's name, the room stopped. And we have made this film based off of our goosebumps, and our skin just crawled. And I believe, and I'm not saying this because she's in this film, but Alfre Woodard is one of our greatest living actors, period. And this is a really complicated, emotionally contained role, and we needed somebody who could fully embody that and who can hold a scene without saying a word, and just communicate so much with their presence and with their eyes. And I can't think of anybody better than Alfre Woodard.
There's a lot of love for you in this room. I'm going to add to it. I take this gig every year because it gives me an opportunity to, even for like 5-10 minutes at a time, sometimes interact with people whose work has profoundly affected me, or work that I just liked, or a scene that they did that still sticks with me. Ever since Scrooged, I fell in love. Grace was the only one that could control Bill Murray's Scrooge. Ever since then, I fell in love. I go to Passion Fish. I go deep with Alfre Woodard. So when I was looking at the list of people I was talking to, I was like, I can't wait. This is a big deal for me. I've been a longtime fan. This movie, how does one prepare for it? Do you sit down with a warden?
Well,
Into the microphone.
oh yes. I only do films that have really good scripts to start with. So the writer is queen or king, as far as I'm concerned, in filmmaking. I've lived a long time and in a lot of places, so, and we do that, we absorb everything around us all the time. So a lot of times I don't have to walk too far to do homework, but this couldn't be acted well. I knew that because I knew nothing about not only being inside, but for the first time we were seeing the people in the middle, the people we charged with carrying out state-sponsored execution. So I needed to go there, and good sister, of course, said, you know what, we're going to prison, we're going to Ohio. So we visited prisons in Ohio. We took a road trip, boy, my. And then, so I met probably about 5 women wardens in Ohio, and I saw the human beings. I heard them, I was with them, I listened to them. I just sat, like, we talked about this, and like smelling them and getting the sense of who they were as human beings. The director of corrections in Ohio, one man who probably has overseen more executions in his life than anybody in the world. So we went to the source because the story that Chinonye wanted to tell is much deeper and bigger than anything we could imagine. That's why we needed to bring that story to the public.
I can't wait to see you in it. But before we jump off, I just wanted to take a moment. I'm a comic book fan. I'd be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to be like, Mariah was amazing. One of the best villains in any comic book, anything. So complex, so wonderful. Thank you for lending your art to such a fun story, but it's a comic book story. But my God, you lifted it with your gravitas. You, sir, how does one prepare for this? Do you speak to folks on death row?
Brother, so the first prep started in the first meeting with Chinonye, and getting her perspective on the whole ordeal, getting her perspective on how to look at men who are sitting on death row, because she had done the research at this point, and what she told me sort of opened up my mind to think differently about these human beings.
How so?
You know, there's a stigma that goes with death row inmate, right? In terms of thinking that, well, obviously you did something, you deserve to be there. That's just what it is. You remove a percentage of humanity from that person's identity because you're sitting in a seat of judgment, as opposed to sitting in a seat of compassion to try to understand what and why. What happened, why they did it. It's not about agreeing with what they did. It's about understanding the human being, right? So when you get to that point, there's a conversation that you have to have with yourself about how you view this whole situation, and your mind does a 360. So that opened me up. The next step was going to San Quentin and actually talking to lifers, guys 25 to life, 18 to life, guys who've been there for 5 years, 10 years, 50 years. A brother was there, he was about around almost in his 80s. He'd been there since he was 18.
Oh my God.
He doesn't know anything else but that. And then you see, and those are just the lifers. Then you go and you see the brothers that are on death row. And even in prison, they're treated substantially different than the lifers, almost to an inhuman degree. When they walk through the yard, everybody has to turn their back and don't speak to them. Can't even look you in the eye. Are you kidding me? So all the way down to their dying breath, they're treated like nothing. And the problem is, yes, I think that whatever they may have done may have been wrong. It may have been inhumane, unforgivable, but there should be some degree of decency given to that person down to their dying breath. But also, for the brothers that are there that shouldn't be there, we should do more to observe and explore how we can actually help this issue. So her film was a film that had an actual motive. It had a reason. It's effective art. And that's part of the passion that brought me to it, because of the fact that I said, she can move some mountains with this work. So the script was beautiful in general. Then on top of that, you add the legend, which I'm not even gonna lie, I'm like, I was like fanboy, I'm like, Alfre Woodard, and then they reveal the rest of the cast. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, oh, we got some fire here, boy. We about to do some things, boy.
The way that that actor's life is, though, you go from, I was just looking at the cards, you go from something like this with a tremendous amount of weight, and then the next thing was What Men Want. Is it, yes, that's incredible range right there. Is it tough to get out of the headspace?
What Men Want, out February 8th, I don't know.
Jumping
Acting will travel.
Exactly. I didn't bring it up. Speaking of acting, sir, one of the defining viewing experiences of my life, of course, was watching The Wire. I imagine everywhere you go, doors open for the bunk.
Yes. Doors open for the bunk, and a drink is sent down the bar.
Always. What is it like when you enter the world as like everybody's friend? Because of something they've seen you in, they know you, there's a familiarity with you.
I think about it, and I know that probably will be the first line of my obituary, Wendell Pierce died at 100 years old today, known as Bunk Moreland from The Wire. But it's really an honor. It starts with writing, and it was a great role and a great world that was created by David Simon, and so I'm honored to be a part of that, and very fortunate, because the other end of the spectrum is, hi, I'm Bob Denver. I play Gilligan,
Yeah, right.
and then. No, I'm not saying that. No, God rest his soul. No, but I'm not. Yeah, I think he even said, "It's an honor."
What was it like jumping into this picture?
It's really interesting because for me it was a different journey because it was so intimate. It comes really right back to Alfre Woodard and this wonderful script. First it was the script, and then, like she said, there was that moment of Alfre Woodard doing it, and it all came together. For me, it was the personal journey of a husband and wife going through the conflict of trying to hold on to this life and this world and this love that they've created, and the impact of the conflict of consciousness that she's going through at work and how that's impacting their lives. And I am also a teacher in the film. So to be aware of the work that she's doing and how I want to protect the children that I'm teaching from even being a part of that world, and so there's that conflict of interest that I have to work to work through with my wife, but Bernadine said something to Jonathan as we were working on this that really has stuck with me to this day. And I said this last night. She said, the thing that just is so frustrating with you is because you men just don't want to do the work when it comes to our relationship. You just don't want to do the work. You just want to just give up and walk away. And that just really stuck with me because it speaks to almost everything of importance to us. Are you willing to do the work, or you just want to give up and walk away? And that's what Bernadine told Jonathan in the film, and just speaks to the core of our relationship.
Beautiful. Are you going to be the one person that says something horrible about Alfre Woodard right here? It's such a love fest.
Well, she looks too good today. That's what I gotta say. Her hair looks good.
What's this like for you? You can't get out of prison between Orange is the New Black and this.
Stuck like Chuck. They ain't going nowhere. I think it's because there's work to do in that area.
Yeah.
And I've been called to be that vessel for those women that live that way. unfortunately, have been incarcerated, and now on the other side of the fence. So it's been quite interesting. I've been playing an inmate for 7 years, so I have spent 7 years really trying to figure out the mindset of a person that is going through this and just going through all of the colors of all of the things that they go through, right? And to now, what I've learned is with Yvette, who I play, she and the people that are also the family members and the loved ones of people that are incarcerated, they're also dealing with this. This is their, they're also dealing with an internal incarceration.
Their life as well.
Yeah, so to me, it wasn't so far-fetched to step into this part. But what was great is, working with Chinonye and working with Aldis, we really got to, build this story together. She gave us the space to figure this story out together because it's so in-depth and it's so rich that you need that time to really, to give it the honor that it deserves. You know what I mean? You have to spend that time doing the work. So we sat and talked for a few hours about like, what is this, And I think we found something beautiful and honest and real. So yeah, it's a woman who is battling with her own internal struggle, with her own secret that she's held on for years, and just trying to find her own freedom. And unfortunately, finding her own freedom is really bounding somebody else up, and a few people up, really. So, yeah.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Richard?
White guy, yeah.
You're the white guy, yeah. One of these things is not like the other. What are you bringing to this?
Whiteosity? I don't know. I just don't want to stop listening to these people express their feelings about this film and the way they work, and just watch the way they listen. These people listen to each other, and it's just such a thrill and an honor to work with people who are present and who listen, and a director who listens and writes from a place of hearing the world. And I'm just very touched. I did a play years ago called Exonerated, and it was about prisoners on death row who had finally been exonerated and found innocent, largely because of DNA technology. And those stories, and embodying those stories for the few weeks I did it, rotating casts and all, was a phenomenal experience in many ways. And then meeting some of those guys who came to the performances, one of whom was a white man in Texas who spent 22 years because the sheriff didn't like him and set him up for a conviction. He was scarred for life, and he was just then, that night, and the Q&A afterwards, talked about the fact that his renovation, what's the word, his rehabilitation, his rediscovery of the world, that day he was moving to a house that he bought with a woman that he fell in love. And that story was just exceptional, And then this script comes along. And I'm thinking now, what the people that worked so hard to get those people that were innocent freed? And now I'm dealing with a character whose choice is to work with a man who will not be freed, and to work in the Clarence Darrow tradition. And Clarence Darrow was a hero of mine as a kid, just reading his not dissertations, his summations, and the work that he did just to save a life, right? And this guy spends his waking hours fighting a fight that he knows he will lose. And that's just an exceptional question to put to an actor do you want to embody this? And for someone to write about characters that are not seen. You know, last night I think I mentioned Roma and what a beautiful film that is because it's about a central character who's not ever seen by the world. And these are the people these are the federal workers that work for free, you know, who nobody thinks about. And the lawyers and all the people connected, the family and there's a no win. It's the mountains are so high to climb, and so I was just very touched by the film and by the writing, by the Chinonye and Bronwyn and everybody here, and I'm not gonna finish without saying that I love Alfre more than anyone else.
I hate to get personal on this, but you worked so closely with President Bartlett. Would he be convinced to run again in 2020?
Well, he's not real.
You guys were so good, I believed it, man.
Would he? Well, it's illegal, and it would be illegal.
That's right, because he had the two.
You'd have to have a constitutional amendment.
I don't think that counts anymore.
No, that's right. You're right.
I believe anything goes right now.
But you know, I think we're headed for a leftist swing that we haven't seen since the 1930s. And it's the Americans out there are going to respond the way we responded to authoritarianism back in the 1930s. And that's when unions were formed. That's when government got involved in the welfare of people. And it wasn't Roosevelt from his throne deciding this. It was people demanding it. And it's going to start in the streets, and it's going to start in the grassroots. And someone even better than Bartlett will be the answer.
Oh my God, this is the most hopeful thing I've heard at Sundance, man. Okay, before we let you go, we got this winter hat here. We put a bunch of questions in it. We ask you to pick one of those questions out. Everybody answer this question, then you're free to go.
Can we trade questions?
Okay. All right. If you could star in a biopic about anybody,
Who are you talking to?
who would it be?
If you could be in a
All
biopic,
of
everybody
you.
answers this. If you could be in a biopic movie about anybody, who would you want to play?
Me.
Yes.
No, I have an answer.
Oh, I thought you were saying who wanted to play you. I was like, you are born to play Alfre, man. Oh my God, you knocked that out the park. Go ahead, what's your answer?
Okay. It would be like a two-parter, and I would just run around as if I'm on stage and just change the habit. I'd be Barbara Jordan and Fannie Lou Hamer.
Yes, yes.
Man, excellent call.
Okay. I wish I looked enough like James Baldwin to play him, so I can't take that one. But if not him, Jack Johnson.
Going up top to you.
Wow, wait, keep going that way.
Going over there to you.
I was just thankful that he was starting on your side.
Keep going that way.
Okay. I would love to get the honor to play Mahalia Jackson.
Yes.
Yes.
Nice pull.
I would love
She took your answer, Richard. What? You better come up with something else.
I'm trying to think of white people worthy. Clarence Darrow came to mind. I look nothing like him. But either that or do a new version of Inherit the Wind. But I'm going to think of someone better. Go ahead.
There's two people. You did the amalgam, but James Farmer, who was one of the great civil rights leaders that came out of Chicago, and was of the Four Horsemen. It was A. Philip Randolph and Martin Luther King Jr. and Whitney Young and James Farmer. And but to star in two movies, to be in Mahalia's movie, and go back home, I would have to play Pops, Louis Armstrong.
Oh, wow. Excellent call.
I came up with a white guy. Albert Einstein.
Oh, yeah.
Right on. There you go.
Did you say Alfred?
Alfred.
Albert.
Yeah, him too.
But you want to play his lesser known
really
idiot
white.
brother, Alfred.
His very
white. You didn't even know that man's name.
his very jealous, unhappy brother, Alfred.
The
No,
thing
Albert-
is, y'all didn't know about Alfred.
We're going to learn about Alfred from this film.
I'm a little scared because I said Albert Einstein. Everyone turned around. Yeah, you look like him.
Give it up for the folks from Clemency, ladies and gentlemen.